Kepler Station floated in the darkness between three dying stars. The massive structure looked like a metal flower with 7 spinning arms that reached out into space. Each arm held thousands of shops, homes, and workplaces. More than 50 different alien species called this place home. But Kepler Station was the quietest place in the known galaxy. Jinwoo pressed his face against the small window of the supply ship as it moved closer to the station. He had never seen anything so big before. The station was larger than most moons he had visited. Lights blinked silently along its surface, like stars that had been caught and held in place. "First time seeing Kepler Station?" asked Captain Morris. "The old human who ran the supply ship?" "Yes," Jinwoo said. "It's amazing. But why is it so dark? I can see the lights, but there's no movement." "No ships coming or going." Captain Morris looked uncomfortable. "You'll understand soon enough, son. Just remember what I told you. When we dock, don't make any noise. Not even a whisper." Jinwoo thought the old captain was joking. He'd heard some space stations had strange rules, but no noise at all. It seemed impossible. The docking bay doors opened without any sound. No grinding metal, no hissing air, nothing. The supply ship glided inside like a ghost. Even the landing was silent. Jinwoo could not hear the ship's engines or the landing clamps clicking into place. How did they do that? Jinwoo whispered. Captain Morris quickly put his finger to his lips and shook his head hard. His eyes were wide with fear. The old man looked terrified. Jinwoo opened his mouth to ask what was wrong, but Captain Morris grabbed his arm and pulled him toward the cargo bay. The captain moved his hands in quick gestures, pointing at boxes and then at Jinwoo. He wanted Jinwoo to help unload the supplies. As they worked, Jinwoo noticed something strange. The docking bay was full of workers from different alien species, but none of them made any sound. A tall blue alien with 4 arms lifted heavy boxes without grunting. A small green creature with big eyes directed others with hand signals. Even when a box slipped and almost fell, the worker caught it without making any noise. Everyone moved like dancers in a silent play. After they finished unloading, Captain Morris led Jinwoo to the station's main corridor. The hallway was wide, enough for 10 people to walk side by side. Shifts lined both walls, their signs glowing with soft colors. But everything was wrong. Children walked holding their parents' hands, but they did not laugh or talk. Gentle hand movements, but they did not call out to customers. Even the food vendors worked behind glass walls, cooking meals that should have sizzled and bubbled, but made no sound at all. Jinwoo saw a small alien child trip and fall. The child's mouth opened wide as if crying, but no sound came out.
"Mother!"
Aliens rushed to help, their faces full of worry, but they too stayed silent. "This is crazy," Jinwoo said in a normal voice. Every alien in the corridor froze. Hundreds of eyes turned to look at him. The fear in their faces was so strong that Jinwoo felt his stomach drop. Some aliens started shaking. Others looked like they wanted to run away. A woman with short black hair rushed through the crowd. She was human, like Jinwoo, but her face was full of panic. She ran straight to him and covered his mouth with her hand. "Quiet," she whispered so softly that Jinwoo could barely hear her. "Please, you have to be quiet." She pulled him into a side corridor, away from the main walkway. Captain Morris followed them, his face pale and worried. The woman led them to a small room with thick walls. Once the door closed, she finally spoke in a normal voice. "Are you trying to get us all killed?" she asked. "I'm sorry, I don't understand," Jinwoo said. "Why can't anyone talk? What's wrong with this place?" The woman sat down hard in a chair. She looked tired, like someone who had not slept well in years. "My name is Mireille," she said. "I'm an engineer here. I've been on this station for 2 years, and I can tell you that making noise is the most dangerous thing you can do in this part of space." "Dangerous how?" Jinwoo asked. Captain Morris spoke up. "The Void Hunter's son. They controlled this whole sector." Mireille nodded. "The Void Hunters are an ancient alien race. They're older than most civilizations in the galaxy. They have one simple rule: no noise. If they hear any sound, even a whisper, they will destroy the entire place where it came from. Jinwoo laughed. That's impossible. How? Can they hear? Sounds across space? Sound doesn't travel in a vacuum. The look on Murray's face made his laughter die in his throat. We don't know how they do it, she said. They can hear everything. 3 years ago, a mining colony on Proxima 7 was celebrating a successful harvest. The workers were singing and laughing. The Void Hunters found them within hours. It destroyed the entire planet. Captain Morris sat down next to Murray. It's true, son. I've seen it happen. The Hunter ships are massive black things that look like they're made of night itself. They don't use weapons. They just touch a planet or station, and everything dies. Everything goes quiet forever. Jinwoo felt cold. But this is insane.
Ow!
Can people live like this? How can children grow up without ever hearing their own voices? We adapt, Murray said sadly. The aliens who live here have developed new ways to communicate. Hand signals, light patterns, written messages. Some species have learned to speak through touch or smell, but humans, we're different. We need to talk. We need to make noise. It's part of who we are. She stood up and walked to a small window. Outside, Jinwoo could see aliens moving through the corridors like ghosts. When I first came here, I thought I would go crazy, Murray continued. I wanted to scream, to sing, to laugh out loud. But I learned to control myself. We all did, because the alternative is death. Jinwoo joined her at the window. He watched a group of alien children playing a game that looked like tag, but they did it in complete silence. Their faces showed joy and excitement, but they could not express it with their voices. How many people live on this station? He asked. About 2 million, Murray said. From 53 different species, all of them living in fear. All of them silent. Captain Morris stood up. I have to go, son. My ship leaves in an hour. Are you sure you want to stay here? Jinwoo looked around the small room. He thought about his new job as a trader on Kepler Station. He thought about the contract he had signed and the money he needed to send back to his family on Earth. I have to stay, he said. But how do I live like this? Murray put her hand on his shoulder. One day at a time, and very, very quietly. As Captain Morris left, Jinwoo realized that his life had just changed forever. It was now part of the most silent place in the galaxy, where fear ruled every moment, and a single sound could mean death for millions. He had never felt so alone. 3 months had passed since Jinwoo first arrived at Kepler Station. He had learned to live in the endless quiet, though it never felt natural. Every morning he woke up wanting to hum or whistle, but he forced himself to stay silent. He had learned the hand signals that most traders used. He could read the light patterns that shops used to advertise their goods. He even carried a small writing pad to communicate with aliens who did not understand human gestures. But the silence was killing him slowly. Murray had become his closest friend on the station. She understood what it was like to be human in a place where being human felt like a crime. They would meet in the small soundproof room where they first talked, and there they could speak in normal voices for a few precious minutes each day. I had a dream last night, Jinwoo told her during one of their meetings. I dreamed I was back on Earth, and I could hear everything. Birds singing, children laughing, music playing. When I woke up, the silence felt like a weight pressing down on my chest. Murray nodded. I know exactly what you mean. Sometimes I think about my little brother back home. He's probably learning to play guitar now. I'll never hear him play. They sat in comfortable silence for a moment. Even their quiet conversations felt precious in this place where words were forbidden. Do you think we'll ever get used to it? Jinwoo asked. I hope not, Murray said. The day we get used to living in fear is the day we stop being human. Their quiet meeting was interrupted by a soft knock on the door. Murray opened it to find Talon, the reptilian station administrator. His long neck swayed as he made quick hand signals. Emergency meeting, Murray translated. All department heads, like something's happening. They followed Talon through the corridors to the station's command center. The room was filled with aliens from different species, all looking worried. At the front of the room stood Elder Nath, an ancient being whose species was so old that no one remembered their real name. Nath's skin looked like old leather, and his eyes held the weight of centuries. Elder Nath activated a holographic display. The image showed space around Kepler Station, small dots marking the positions of ships and asteroids. Then new dots appeared. Black dots moving toward the station. Every alien in the room became perfectly still. Some started shaking. Others closed their eyes as if they could make the danger disappear. Elder Nath moved his hands in slow, careful gestures. Myray watched and translated quietly for Jinwoo. "Void Hunter Patrol," she whispered. 3 ships. They'll be here in 6 hours. Jinwoo felt his blood turn cold. He had heard stories about the Void Hunters for 3 months, but he had never seen them. Part of him had hoped they were just myths used to scare people into staying quiet. The meeting continued with hand signals and light patterns. Each department head reported on their preparations. The station's engines would be shut down completely. All non-essential power would be turned off. Everyone would remain in their quarters until the patrol passed. As the meeting ended, Jinwoo noticed something that made his heart race. Near the back of the room stood a human family. A man and woman with a small girl who looked about 5 years old. The child was fidgeting and looking around with bright, curious eyes.
"Who are they?" Jinwoo asked Myray.
"The Kims," she replied. "They're traveling to the outer colonies. Their ship had engine trouble, so they're stuck here for repairs." Jinwoo watched the little girl. She was trying to stay quiet like everyone else, but she was clearly struggling. Children were not meant to be silent. They were meant to laugh and play and ask questions. 6 hours later, the Void Hunter ships arrived. Jinwoo had never seen anything like them. The ships were huge, each one the size of a small moon. They were perfectly black, so dark that they seemed to absorb the light from nearby stars. Looking at them hurt his eyes, as if his brain could not process something so completely empty of light. The ships moved in perfect formation, circling Kepler Station like predators studying their prey. They made no sound that normal sensors could detect, but somehow everyone on the station knew they were there. The fear was like a living thing, spreading through the corridors and into every room. Jinwoo sat in his quarters, trying to control his breathing. Through his small window, he could see one of the Void Hunter ships passing by. It was so close that he could see strange patterns on its surface, like veins of deeper darkness running through the black hole. Everything was going according to plan. The station was perfectly quiet. The patrol would pass by and continue on, to terrorize other parts of the galaxy. Then disaster struck. Jinwoo heard it first. A small sound, barely louder than a whisper. Something metallic hitting the floor. The sound came from the corridor outside his room. He opened his door and looked out. Down the hallway, he saw the Kim family standing frozen in terror. The little girl was crying, but no sound came from her mouth. At her feet lay a small metal toy, probably a birthday gift from her parents. The toy had fallen and made noise. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the lights in the corridor began to flicker. The Void Hunter ships outside changed their movement pattern. Instead of circling, they began moving closer to the station. The little girl picked up her toy and held it close. She looked up at her parents with wide, scared eyes. She did not understand what was happening, but she could feel the fear from every adult around her. Other aliens began appearing in the corridor. They moved like sleepwalkers, drawn by the same terrible knowledge. The Void Hunters had heard the sound. They were coming. Elder Nath appeared, moving faster than Jinwoo had ever seen the old being move. His hands made frantic gestures to the Kim family. The message was clear. Hide, run, do anything to get away from the source of the sound. But it was too late. Through the station's windows, everyone could see the Void Hunter ships moving into attack formation. The black vessels positioned themselves around Kepler Station like the points of a star. They were preparing to do what they had done to countless other places. Touch the station and drain all life from it. Jinwoo watched the little girl clutching. Her toy and something inside him broke. This child was about to die because she had dropped a toy. 2 million people were about to die because a scared little girl had made a sound. He thought about his dreams of Earth, of birds singing and children laughing. He thought about Moray's brother learning to play guitar, thought about all the music and laughter and joy that the Void Hunters had stolen from the galaxy. This is wrong, he whispered to himself. Then he did something that no one expected. He walked over to the Kim family and knelt down next to the little girl. Her parents looked at him with terror, probably thinking he was going to hurt their daughter for dooming them all instead. Jinwoo smiled at the child and held out his hand. "What's your name?" he asked in a normal voice. The sound of his words echoed through the corridor like thunder. Every alien pressed themselves against the walls, waiting for death to come. But Jinwoo kept talking to the little girl, his voice calm and gentle in the face of approaching doom. "Don't be scared," he said. "Everything will be okay. You're the Void Hunter." Ships moved closer, their black hulls now almost touching the station's outer walls. But something strange was happening. The ships had stopped moving. They hung in space as if waiting for something. Jinwoo did not know it yet, but his simple act of kindness was about to change everything. The little girl looked up at Jinwoo with tears in her eyes. Her name was Bora, and she was scared. She did not understand why everyone was so frightened, but she could feel the fear like a cold wind blowing through the corridor. "My toy," she whispered, holding up the small metal spaceship. "I dropped my toy." "It's okay," Jinwoo said softly. "Toys fall sometimes. That's what toys do." The other aliens in the corridor watched in horror. They could not believe that a human was talking. Normally, while the Void Hunters surrounded their station, some of them started backing away, thinking that Jinwoo had gone crazy with fear. But something unexpected was happening outside. The Void Hunter ships had stopped moving. For the first time in recorded history, they were not immediately attacking. After detecting sound, the massive black vessels hung in space like they were thinking, like they were trying to understand something new. Mira appeared at the end of the corridor. She saw Jinwoo talking to Bora and started running toward them. Her face showed panic and confusion. "Jinwoo, what are you doing?" she called out, not caring about staying quiet anymore. "I'm talking to a scared little girl," Jinwoo replied. Needed someone to tell her everything would be okay. Mireille reached them and knelt down next to Bora. The child looked at both humans with wonder. In her short life, she had never seen adults act so calm when everyone else was terrified. "Are the bad ships going to hurt us?" Bora asked. Jinwoo looked out the window at the Void Hunter vessels. They were still motionless, still waiting. "I don't know," he said honestly. "But if they do, at least you won't be alone." More humans began appearing in the corridor. Word was spreading through the station that something unusual was happening. The Kim family stood together, holding each other close. The human workers and travelers came to see what was going on. Dr. Soyen, the station's human medical officer, arrived with her emergency kit. She had expected to find people injured or dying. But instead, she found Jinwoo and Mireille sitting on the floor with a small child, talking in normal voices. "The ships," Dr. Soyen said. "They're not attacking." "Why aren't they attacking, Elder?" Nath appeared, moving slowly on his ancient legs. The old being's eyes were wide with confusion. In all his centuries of life, he had never seen Void Hunters hesitate. They always struck immediately after detecting sound through the stations. Communication system. Emergency messages began flashing on wall screens. The messages were in dozens of languages, but they all said the same thing. Void Hunters have stopped. Unknown reason. All citizens remain in quarters. But the humans were not going to their quarters. More of them kept coming to the corridor. Where Jinwoo sat with Bora, they formed a small group around the child. They began doing something that no one had done on Kepler Station in years. They began talking normally. "What's your favorite color?" asked Mireille. "Pink," Bora said with a small smile, "and blue like the stars." "I like blue too," said Doyon, a human diplomat who had been visiting the station. "Blue reminds me of the sky on my home planet." The conversation was simple and gentle, but it echoed through the corridor like music. The aliens watching could not believe what they were seeing. The humans were not screaming or crying or begging for mercy. They were comforting a child. Outside, the Void Hunter. Ships began to move again, but not in the attack pattern everyone expected. The massive vessels started circling the station in a different way, like they were studying it instead of preparing to destroy it. Captain Rix, commander of the lead Void Hunter ship, stood in his dark command chamber, staring at the readings. From his sensors? For over 1,000 years, he had traveled the galaxy, enforcing the Great Silence. Every time his ships detected sound, they would eliminate the source completely and efficiently. But this was different. The sounds coming from Kepler Station were not screams of fear or cries of pain. They were soft voices speaking with kindness. They were sounds of comfort and care. In all his centuries of existence, Captain Rix had never encountered anything like this. His crew members, tall shadowy beings with eyes like dying stars, looked at him with confusion. They were waiting for orders to attack, but their commander stood frozen. "What are your orders, Captain?" asked Second Dash. In Dash Command, Captain Rix did not answer immediately. He listened to the gentle voices coming from the station's speakers. He heard a small child asking questions about stars and planets. He heard adult humans answering with patience and love. For the first time in 1,000 years, Captain Rix felt something other than the cold hunger that usually drove his people. He felt curious. Back on the station, more humans had gathered around Bora. They were telling her stories about their homeworlds, describing the sounds of rain and wind and ocean waves. The child listened with fascination, her fear slowly disappearing. "On my planet," said Heian, a human psychologist, "the birds sing different songs depending on the time of day. In the morning, they sing wake-up songs. In the evening, they sing good-night songs. I want to hear bird songs," Bora said. "Maybe someday you will," Jinwoo said. "Maybe someday all the children in the galaxy will hear birds singing again." Aliens watching from the sides of the corridor began to understand something important. The humans were not just talking to comfort one child. They were talking because it was part of their nature. They were showing everyone that there was another way to respond to fear. Instead of becoming silent, they became more human. Elder Nath stepped forward slowly. The ancient being had lived through the first Void Hunter attacks, back when his people still remembered what it was like to speak freely. He had seen entire civilizations choose silence over death, but he had never seen anyone choose to be louder when death was approaching. Using his hands, Elder Nath made a gesture that few beings in the galaxy remembered. It was an old sign that meant respect and admiration. He was honoring the humans for their courage. Other aliens began to step closer. They were still afraid, but they were also amazed. A small insectoid creature clicked its mandibles softly. A blue-skinned alien hummed a note so quiet it was almost not there. For the first time in years, non-human voices began to join the gentle sounds in the corridor. The Void Hunter ships detected these new sounds, but still they did not attack. Captain Rix and his crew continued to circle the station, listening and learning. Something was changing in the galaxy, and it started with a human's decision to comfort a frightened child. The Void Hunter ships had been circling Kepler Station for 6 hours. This was longer than they had ever stayed near any target without attacking. Captain Rix finally made a decision that surprised even himself. He was going to board the station. Docking bay doors opened as the first Void Hunter transport approached. The small ship was as black as the larger vessels, but up close. The aliens on the station could see that it was not completely dark. Thin lines of deep purple light ran along its surface like veins. Every alien on Kepler Station felt terror when they saw Void Hunters for the first time. The beings were tall and thin, with skin that seemed to absorb light. Their eyes glowed with a dim purple color, and when they moved, they seemed to flow like shadows given form. But as Captain Rix and his guards entered the station, something strange happened. They did not immediately begin their usual destruction. Instead, they moved slowly through the corridors. Listening to the sounds that still echoed from where the humans had gathered, Jinwoo was still sitting with Bora when the Void Hunters found them. The little girl saw the dark beings approaching and hid behind Jinwoo, but she did not scream. The humans had kept her calm, and now she trusted them to protect her. Captain Rix stopped a few meters away from the group. His purple eyes studied the humans with an expression that was hard to read. The other aliens in the corridor pressed themselves against the walls, expecting death to come at any moment. "You are not afraid," Captain Rick said. His voice was deep and hollow, like wind blowing through an empty cave. It was the first time in centuries that anyone had heard a Void Hunter speak. Jinwoo looked up at the tall, dark figure. "We are afraid," he said honestly, "but fear doesn't have to make us silent." Captain Rix tilted his head, studying Jinwoo like he was a puzzle that needed solving. All beings become silent when they feel fear. This is the natural way. This is how it has always been. "Not humans," Myray said, standing up beside Jinwoo. "When humans are afraid, we reach out to each other. We talk, we comfort, we make noise, to push the darkness away." The Void Hunter captain was quiet for a long moment. Then he did something that no one expected. He sat down on the floor, moving his long limbs carefully until he was at the same level as the humans. "Tell me about your fear," he said. Dr. Soyan stepped forward. As a medical officer, she was trained to help people in crisis. Even if those people were terrifying aliens from beyond known space, fear is a feeling that keeps us alive, she explained. It warns us about danger. But humans learned long ago that fear becomes smaller when we share it with others. "Sharing makes it smaller?" Captain Rix asked. He sounded genuinely confused. "Yes, you," said Heian, the psychologist. "When I tell someone that I'm scared and they tell me they understand, the fear doesn't feel as big anymore." Captain Rix looked around at all the aliens pressed against the corridor walls. These beings do not share their fear. They keep it inside and let it grow until it consumes them. "Because you taught them to," Jinwoo said quietly. The words hung in the air like a challenge. Every alien in the corridor held their breath, waiting for Captain Rix to become angry and destroy them all. But instead, the Void Hunter captain nodded slowly. "Yes," he said, "we taught them. For over 1,000 years we have traveled the galaxy teaching fear and silence. But I begin to think we have forgotten why we started." Elder Nath found the courage to move closer. The ancient being's hand shook. As he made careful gestures, asking permission to speak, Captain Rix looked at him with interest. "You may use your voice, Elder. I remember when your people could speak." Elder Nath's voice was rusty from years of disuse, but he managed to whisper, "Why did you begin the Great Silence?" Captain Rix was quiet for so long that everyone thought he would not answer. When he finally spoke, his voice carried the weight of centuries. "My people were dying," he said. "We are creatures who feed on emotion, but not the emotions you might think. We do not eat happiness, or love, or anger. We eat fear. Fear that has been kept inside, compressed and concentrated until it becomes pure terror." The humans and aliens listened in shocked silence. "Long ago, the galaxy was full of noise and joy," Captain Rix continued. "But joy does not feed us. We grew weak and hungry. Some of my people died from starvation. So we decided to create fear. We attacked worlds and ships, not to destroy them, but to teach the survivors to be afraid. The more afraid they became, the more we could feed. But something went wrong," Dr. Soyan said, beginning to understand. "Oh yes," Captain Rix admitted. "We were too successful. They made the galaxy so afraid that entire species chose permanent silence over risking our attention. The fear became so complete, so empty, that it no longer feeds us properly. We are starving again, but now we do not know how to stop." Bora, who had been listening quietly, tugged on Jinwoo's sleeve. "The scary man is hungry?" she asked. Jinwoo looked down at her, then up at Captain Rix. "Are you hungry?" The Void Hunter captain looked at the small child with an expression that might have been surprise. "Yes, little one. My people are very hungry. My mommy always says that hungry people need food, not fear," Bora said seriously. Captain Rix leaned closer to the child. "What kind of food do you think we need?" Bora thought for a moment, her small face scrunched up in concentration. "Happy food," she said finally. "Like birthday cake and laughing and singing songs." "We cannot eat happiness," Captain Rix said. Gently, "Our bodies are not made for joy." But Heian, the psychologist, had been thinking about what the Void Hunter had said. What if you could learn to eat different emotions? What if fear and joy are not so different as you think? Captain Rix looked at her with his glowing purple eyes. Explain. Both fear and joy make people feel alive, Heian said. Both make hearts beat faster and bodies feel energy. Maybe your people have been eating the wrong kind of fear. Maybe you need the kind of fear that makes people brave instead of silent. The fear that makes people speak louder instead of becoming quiet. Murray added, Captain. Rick stood up slowly, his tall form seeming to think about these new ideas. Around the corridor, other Void Hunters had arrived and were listening to the conversation with growing interest. For the first time in 1,000 years, they were learning that there might be another way to survive. Show us, Captain Rick said. Finally, show us this fear that makes noise instead of silence. Ginwu stood up and looked around the corridor at all the faces watching him. Humans and aliens, young and old, all waiting to see what would happen next. Even the Void Hunters seemed curious instead of threatening. Fear that makes noise, he said slowly, thinking about the idea. I think I understand. He turned to Captain Rix. When I first saw your ships, I was terrified. But instead of becoming silent, I wanted to talk to this little girl even more. The fear made me want to connect with someone, not hide from them. Murray nodded. It's like being afraid of the dark, so you call out to find other people, or singing. When you're scared, because the sound of your own voice makes you feel less alone, added Dr. Captain Rix listened carefully. So you make noise to fight fear, not to feed it. Exactly, Jinwoo said. What if we showed you what that sounds like? What if everyone on this station made noise together? Not because they're terrified, but because they're choosing to be brave, Elder. Nath stepped forward, his ancient voice growing stronger. A great symphony instead of a great silence. The idea spread through the corridor like wildfire. Aliens began to whisper to each other, their voices rusty from years of disuse. The sound was beautiful and strange, like hearing ghosts remember how to speak, but many of the aliens were still too afraid. They had lived in silence for so long that the idea of making noise seemed impossible. What if the Void Hunters decide to attack? Asked a small blue alien. What if we anger them? Whispered a reptilian trader. Captain Rix heard their concerns and made a decision that surprised everyone, including himself. He gestured to his guards, and they began to back away from the group. We will not attack, he announced in a voice loud enough for everyone to hear. Today, we want to learn, not destroy. Make your sounds. Show us this new kind of fear. The word spread through Kepler Station faster than anyone expected. For the first time in years, the communication systems carried voices instead of just written messages. People began emerging from their quarters, drawn by the impossible news that the Void Hunters were not attacking. In the main plaza of the station, beings from dozens of species gathered. They looked nervous and excited, like children about to break a rule that had controlled their entire lives. Jinwoo found himself standing in the center of the plaza, Bora still holding his hand. The little girl was not afraid anymore. She was excited to be part of something important. What should we do? Asked a tall alien with 4 arms. Just make the sounds that feel natural, Jinwoo said. Don't think about being perfect. Think about being alive. He took a deep breath and began to hum a simple tune, something his mother had sung to him when he was Bora's age. The sound echoed off the plaza walls, the first human song heard in this place in years. Bora giggled and began to hum along, her small voice blending with Jinwoo's. Then Murray joined them, and Dr. Soyin, and all the other humans on the station. The aliens watched in amazement as the humans created music together without any planning or practice. It was not perfect, but it was full of life and joy and hope. Slowly, other voices began to join in. Elder Noth began to make deep, resonant sounds that his people had not heard in centuries. The blue aliens created high, bell-like tones. The reptilian beings hissed in rhythm, turning their breathing into music. A small insectoid creature began to click and chirp, creating complex patterns that sounded like a conversation between many voices. Children of different species started to laugh and play, their sounds mixing together like a celebration. Even the station's machinery seemed to join the symphony. Normally, silent systems began to hum and whir, their mechanical sounds adding to the growing music. Captain Rix and his Void Hunters watched from the edges of the plaza. As the symphony grew louder and more complex, something incredible began to happen. The Void Hunters began to change. Their dark skin started to show colors. Deep purples and blues that pulsed in rhythm with the music. Their eyes grew brighter, shifting from dim purple to brilliant silver. For the first time in 1,000 years, they looked alive instead of empty. "What is happening to us?" asked one of Captain Rix's guards. "We are feeding," Captain Rix replied, his voice filled with wonder, but not on fear. "We are feeding on courage. On the choice to make noise when noise is dangerous. On the decision to connect instead of hide." The symphony continued to grow. Beings who had never spoken to each other before began to create sounds together. A mining family from the outer colonies taught their traditional work songs to a group of merchant traders. Scientists from different worlds shared the musical patterns they used to remember complex equations. Bora ran through the plaza, encouraging shy aliens to join in. Her laughter became part of the music, and soon dozens of other children were laughing with her. But the most amazing change was happening to the Void Hunters themselves, as they absorbed the energy of brave noise instead of terrified silence. They began to remember things they had forgotten. Captain Rix found himself recalling ancient songs that his people had sung before they became hunters. Other Void Hunters began to move in rhythm with the music, their bodies swaying like dancers. "We are not always creatures of fear, Captain," Rix said to Jinwoo. "Long ago, my people were musicians. We traveled the galaxy to learn new songs and share them with others." "What happened?" Jinwoo asked. "We lost our way," Captain Rix admitted. "We became so focused on survival that we forgot what made life worth living." The symphony reached its peak as every being in the plaza contributed their voice to the music. It was chaotic and beautiful, imperfect and alive. It was the sound of a galaxy choosing courage over fear as the music filled the station and echoed. Into space, other ships began to approach Kepler Station. Traders and travelers who had avoided this sector for years heard impossible sounds and came to investigate. Word spread through the galaxy's communication networks. The great silence was broken. Kepler Station had become a place of music. Instead of fear, in the months that followed, everything changed. The Void Hunters abandoned their role as enforcers of silence. Instead, they became the harmony seekers. Traveling from world to learn new songs and help other species find their voices again, Captain Rix, now calling himself Harmony Keeper Rix, established the first intergalactic music school on Kepler Station. Beings from across the galaxy came to learn how to make beautiful sounds together. Jinwoo and Mireille became the first human-alien cultural exchange ambassadors. They traveled to worlds that had been silent for centuries, teaching other species. That courage could be as simple as choosing to hum a song. Bora grew up in a galaxy where children could laugh and sing without fear. When she was old enough, she composed the first intergalactic symphony, a piece of music that required voices from 50 different species to perform correctly. Elder Nath lived to see his people singing again before he passed, away peacefully, surrounded by the sounds of life and joy, and in the deepest parts of space, where silence had once ruled absolutely, new sounds began to echo. The laughter of children, the songs of lovers, the conversations of friends, and the music of species learning to trust each other. The galaxy had learned that sometimes the bravest thing you can do is make noise. When everyone else is silent, fear had driven them to silence, but a human's laugh had echoed louder than any weapon. And in that echo, the entire galaxy found its voice again.